The Old Testament reading is Deuteronomy chapter 30, beginning with the 15th verse. See, I have set before you this day life and good, death and evil. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day, by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways, and by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his ordinances, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land which you are entering to take possession of it. But if your heart turns away, and you will not hear, but are drawn away to worship other gods and serve them, I declare to you this day that you shall perish. You shall not live long in the land which you are going over to the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your descendants may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying his voice, and cleaving to him. For that means life to you and length of days, that you may dwell in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. Please stand for the reading of the gospel. The gospel reading is Matthew chapter 5, beginning with the 21st verse. You have heard that it was said to the men of old, you shall not kill, and whoever kills shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother shall be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, shall be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there at the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Make friends quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly, I say to you, you will never get out till you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
I suspect that if a doctor or a tester of some kind could attach some equipment to you to test your response to various words, if I said chocolate ice cream, like a warm response. If I say commandments, even will warm up and get excited about, commandments, that's just such a wonderful thing. Tell us about the commandments. I did have one woman years ago, I've told a few of you about this. Miss Sally was a member of my church. It was her 100th birthday, so I thought as pastor I should go call on her. And so I went to her house. I came in, and she sat in a rocking chair, and I sat across from her. We had a lovely conversation about aging, the world changing during her lifetime. And then she said to me, you know what my favorite part of the Bible is? And I said, no, Miss Sally, what? She said, the commandments. Like, no one's ever said that before. And I said, oh, cool. I said, why do you like the commandments so much? She said, without the commandments, the world would really be in a mess. I thought the world is in a mess. But it would be worse without the commandments. How do we think about God's commandments? The Bible's full of them, right? We're not, the Israelites arrive at the promised land, and they're there at the peak of Mount Nebo, and they peer over into the promised land, and they're ready just to swarm in there and enjoy the place. But Moses says, well, first, God has a few commandments that you need to hear before you go in there. Or Jesus shows up, he's healing and he's feeding people, and they're thinking it's great. But then he goes on, it's that Sermon on the Mount, right? And he gives them a bunch of commandments that I would rank as really hard. Like love your enemies. Ooh, that's very hard. Commandments. How do we think about commandments? We are not commandment lovers. We do know people who are rule keepers. Probably this room could be divided into those who are rule keepers and those like me for whom rules are mildly interesting for those who need them, is sort of my viewpoint. I have a friend, he and I actually have a hard time walking around together because when we go to cross the street, I look for the first opening and I dash on across. He pushes the button, waits for the little green guy to appear, then he walks across. He'll do a sidewalk like this. I cut across the grass. He is a rule keeper. God bless them. The world needs them, I suppose. There are also those who, they think about God's commandments as a good thing, but they think they're good for somebody else, right? And usually it's in a condemning kind of mode, like God commanded these things and they're not doing them. And it's something that you don't like and it gets on your nerves. So you're annoyed with these people. So God's commandments are for somebody else. They're not for us so much. I want us to rethink the commandments in the Bible in this way, to say how good of God. How good of the God who created the universe and made every one of us in this room to show us how to live, to show us the way, to give us the blueprint, to say you're not just on your own to live randomly any old way that you want. I have a way for you to live, and it's good. You can trust it. How good of God. I'm giving a lecture next month at a law school, and they asked me to talk about biblical law versus American law, or sort of biblical versions of truth versus modern ways we think about truth. So I've been trying to think about law in America. A bunch of you are lawyers, like you could guide me on this, but it seems to me most laws sort of exist to be, they're sort of fences or they're corrective measures because people don't always behave, people don't always get along, so we need some guidelines on how to get along and deal with people that cause trouble. Laws, for instance, stealing unchecked. Like that just leads to total chaos. We can't have stealing. Society would just unravel. Or 4-year-olds driving cars. That's a really bad idea. So we have a law. You got to be 16 or whatever. Some laws, it's very interesting. Laws are not all good. Some laws actually enshrine evil. In Nazi Germany, there were all these laws about where Jews could go and where they couldn't go, and what they could do and what they couldn't do, and what they had to wear. They had to wear yellow stars of David that said Juden so that they could be identified as Jews, and eventually law said that Jews could be stolen from, their businesses could be seized, they could be killed. That was the law of the land. The United States of America. Rosa Parks, a very gentle Methodist seamstress. She broke the law of the land when she refused to give up her seat on a bus. There are all kinds of evil laws that had been enshrined. God's laws never enshrine evil. God's laws aren't even about correcting bad behavior. God's laws aren't primarily fences. God's laws are a good God who lovingly fashioned the universe and wove you together in your mother's womb. That God has woven into the very character of creation a way to live that is good. It is actually good for us. It's not just God saying, well, here's something I think you ought to do. It's that God loves you more than you love yourself. And God has some ideas for you that are actually very helpful for you, although we often think we know better. I'll give you an example. One is over and over in the Bible in various ways it says, you shall remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. On it, you shall do no work. And we've heard that, but we think we know better than God. Or we think, well, God doesn't really know how busy that I am. A couple Sundays ago, it was interesting. Sometimes I prowl around the sanctuary, look for people that I don't know, or somebody who had a death recently or whatever. And I saw a guy in the back, he's fairly new to the church. I wanted to speak to him. So when I got to him, he noticed that I was there, but he wasn't ready to talk to me yet. He's got his phone, so he holds me off. He said, just a minute. He's typing, and he says, I'm completing a business deal with my colleague. I'm like, dude, you're in church. Are any of you out there right now doing business? One Sunday, somebody told me, they said, oh, the person next to me, I thought they were just taking such diligent notes during your sermon. Oh, but then I looked at it more closely and it said, bread, orange juice. We're always multitasking. We think if I multitask, I'll be more than I am. I won't just be here, I'll be somewhere else. I won't just do this, I'll also do something else. I won't just talk to you, I'll also talk to the Sabbath. See, God says, it's not like don't have fun one day. No, God knows that we get exhausted. I find this in counseling. People come to me and I'll say, give me one adjective that describes how you feel. Most people will say, I am so weary. Like God knew you'd get tired, so God said, 1 day a week, just chill. Don't do any work. Turn off the gadgets. Just sit. Just rest. It's not just that it's okay, you have permission to, it's actually good for you. It'll heal your soul. That's part of our emotionally healthy spirituality shtick, right? You turn stuff off. You say no. You just take some time just to take a deep breath. It's okay. It's the way God made you. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, he thinks about all these commandments and how they're good for us and how not following them can be bad for us. And he ratchets it up, I think, not to make it harder, but to make it even like healthier for us. You know, Jesus says, okay, you know the commandment, thou shalt not kill. And most of us in this room, we've made it this far without murdering anybody. But Jesus says, if you even harbor anger in your heart, you're guilty of murder. And we think, oh, what chance do I have? Because we're an angry people, we Americans in the year 2014. And Jesus doesn't say this like, bad boy, you were angry, bad, naughty. It's not that at all. It's that Jesus knows that anger will rip up your very own soul. I know people all the time, they are so angry at Obama. And they are so angry at their neighbor across the street. And they're so angry at their brother who doesn't do what he is supposed to do. Or they are so angry at whoever. And none of these people ever know anything about it. You're just fuming inside. And you know who gets chewed up? That would be you. That would be you. The one who gets killed would be, and Jesus knew this. So Jesus said, chill on the anger. It's really not good for you. Really not good for you. Jesus says that bit about, don't call somebody a fool. I mean, that's just political discourse in America, right? Or, a fool. But Jesus knows it's not good for you to think of other people this way. Or Jesus says that thing about adultery. Now, Jesus spiritualizes it, but before we do that, I should just say that adultery is just such a bad idea. It's just such a bad idea. The carnage that I see in families is so painful. But Jesus adds, he says, well, even if you harbor lust in your heart, and we think, oh, gosh. But you see what Jesus is saying? Again, it's not naughty. You turned your head, you looked, you thought something. It's that what Jesus knew is that if you love someone, or even if you don't, that if you think tawdry thoughts about others, sexual thoughts about others, that actually poisons you on the inside, and it poisons a relationship, and it poisons a whole family. It has poisoned our entire culture, has it not? It's just our whole culture is about lust, and it's just poisoned. Jesus knew that would be bad for us. How should we say it? The Bible is interested in detail. There's a lot of attention to detail. There was a rabbi in the early days who bragged that he loved Judaism because it showed that God cared what you did with your pots and your pans and what you did in the bedroom and what you did at the workshop. God cares about all these little things, and it's the little things that make or break us. C.S. Lewis once said, it's not some big decision that you make that makes you a Christian or not. He said it's the 1,000 little decisions that you make. Today, before the day's out, you're going to make 137 little decisions. I'm going to watch this, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to say this, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to think about that, I'm going to say. You should make hundreds of little decisions. And he says, your whole life is thousands of little decisions. Each one's just a little decision. It's not a big deal, right? But each little decision, you become a little something you weren't before. And Lewis says, all of those thousands of little decisions together, you're either becoming a hellish creature or a heavenly creature. You're either chewing your own self up alive, or you're getting in sync with God and you're being healthy and at peace. It can be good. It's a matter of the heart. It's a matter of what we love. It's a matter of whom we trust. How do I think about this? When I was in graduate school at Duke, I took I don't know why I did this. I took a course on Christian philosophical ethics. That's just hopelessly intellectual and complicated. And I opened the first textbook, and it was by this guy named Alasdair MacIntyre. He's this Brit. And he, in this book, I circled his first sentence. The reason I circled it at the time is it's the longest sentence I'd ever read in my life. It was a page and a half. Like, dude, why go make it 7 sentences, something? Page and a half. So I thought, that's an amazing sentence that he could carry on that long. That many subordinate clauses. What a run-on sentence. I went back and reread his sentence. And what it's about is actually something that is enormously important. How do we decide how to be good? How do we decide how we're going to live our lives? He says there's one school of thought that thinks, well, I just look at some abstract ideas and I pick the one that I want for me and I go do that. He said that's not actually how it works. Actually, what you choose to do has to do with to whom you are loyal. Your lifestyle is always attached to some human being that you really love and admire. And you got to think about who those people are. Who do you take your cues from? Who do you listen to? Who shaped you? When I started graduate school at Duke, I signed up for a course from a professor. His name was Father Roland Murphy. He was a Catholic priest. We called him Father Murphy. He, in my life, he was a teacher. He was an advisor. He directed my doctoral work. He became really my life mentor and sage. I didn't make important decisions without sitting down and talking to him. He loved me. He could ask me hard questions. He cared for the God part of me. He wasn't that kind of supportive presence that we loved. It's just kind of whatever foolishness we're up to. They say, oh, I love you. I support you, whatever you do. Isn't that just the dumbest advice ever? I support you whatever you do. I mean, you love them, whatever they do, but people do stupid things that should not be supported. Like the choir got that immediately. Right? So I trusted him, and he never said, James, I think you should fill in the blank, that I didn't do it. Because he knew me, he loved me, I trusted his wisdom, he was wonderful. I did whatever he asked me to do. I mean, it's there in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy says this thing, choose life, that you and your descendants may live, obeying the Lord's voice and cleaving to him. To whom do you cleave? I clove to Father Murphy. He became like a father to me in my life. Here's another example. Sometimes people will ask me, what is your political party affiliation? I never declare this in the pulpit. Sometimes I'll ask people to guess. 2/3 of the people get it right, and 1/3 of the people get it wrong. I kind of like that. And sometimes in private, someone will say, what are you? I'll tell you in private. I don't mind telling you. And I'll tell, and they'll say, why? Sometimes they say, why? But why? And I wish I had a better answer. What my answer is, I actually like my answer. What my answer is this. When I was a little boy, I had this grandfather I told you about before. His name was Papa Howell. He was just wonderful, and he loved me. He loved me more than the other grandchildren, but he loved all of us so much. And he spent so much time with me, and he was just this devout Christian, but not in a pious, smug way, and he just took me fishing. I just loved him. I trusted him. He loved me. And he was involved in politics himself. So one time when I was a little boy, I think I was maybe 6 at the time, he sat me down and he said, James, when you grow up, this is the political party you will affiliate with. And then he gave me a rationale. It was a really good rationale that I have never had disproven all of these years. So I am a member of that party, and I'm 58 years old, and I don't see myself changing anytime soon. Even though my party has some real nincompoops, like the other party. I am that because of someone that I loved and admired. The question is, who do you love and admire? Who do you take your cues from? The sad thing in America is we don't take our cues from wise people, or even from people who have our best interests at stake. We take our cues from the angry people. Liberals take their cues from, who are the angry liberals? Michael Moore, maybe? Who are the angry, I'm going to get in so much trouble today, I see it all day long. Who are the angry conservatives? Is it Bill O'Reilly, Rush Limbaugh? I don't know. We take our cues from the angry people. Do you want to take your cues from the angry people? Or would you rather find somebody like a Roland Murphy, or my grandfather, somebody that's holy, somebody that's good, somebody that's godly? Jesus says, trust me. Like, I'm God's son. I'm God in the flesh. I came here to love you and to heal you and to save you. Trust me. Cleave to me. Whom do you trust? One last thing. I know I'm talking way too long, but I just want to say this in closing. Is the laws in the Bible exist not only to help us be the people that God, who loves us more than we love ourselves, wants us to be, right? The laws in the Bible tell us how to be the kind of community that God likes. I mean, we know how to organize ourselves as people in certain ways, but most of the time it's not really the way God wants us to get organized as people. The way we typically organize ourselves as people, I would call clubs. You know, when you're in a club, you're with people that they're like you, and you enjoy the same stuff, and it feels pretty safe, and maybe you pay dues or not, and you have a club, and you're with people that are like you. And that's just how clubs are organized. And it's fun. But see, in God's law, there's this curious stuff, and it's throughout the Bible, but it begins in the book of Leviticus, where Leviticus says, when you get yourselves organized as people, like, don't just include yourselves, but also welcome the stranger, the alien, the sojourner, the person that just showed up and they don't have any place to live, include them. Jesus extends that and says, like, include the untouchables, the people that nobody else wants to have anything to do with. That'd go great, right, with Charlotte's country clubs. Like, they're going to change their policies. Oh yeah, this year we're going to welcome a few members who, like, just waltzed into town and don't have a house. Like, that'll pass, won't it? Jesus says, in my community, you welcome the stranger. And it makes me wonder things like, who's not welcome? You know, tonight, this month, we're looking at mental health and Christianity, all this stuff. It's wonderful. Tonight, Dr. Warren Kinghorn, a psychiatrist, also teaches on the faculty of the Divinity School, is coming to speak to us. He's wonderful. You'll love this. You should come. He's going to talk about mental health and Christianity, or mental illness and Christianity. And one of the questions in that is like, what kind of church are we going to be? I mean, there's a lot of mental illness out there. And I mean, there's bad stuff, but it's all bad stuff, isn't it? Just the kind of garden variety depression and anxiety that we all deal with. What kind of church are we going to be because of this? I said at the beginning of this series that what happens to us is if somebody in our church has colon cancer, we are outstanding. We are outstanding. We bring casseroles and we knit prayer shawls and we have prayer chains and we hug people. We're great at that. But what if somebody says, my wife is bipolar? We kind of go, don't know what to say, don't know what to do. Or if somebody has Alzheimer's, we're like, I hope they put her somewhere. Warren Kinghorn and I have exchanged a few emails talking about a blog that we saw recently about a town in Belgium. It's an interesting place, this town of Gill. 700 years ago, that's a long time ago, they decided they were going to do something novel, which is that they would welcome mentally ill people to come live in their town. So they did. And over 700 years, thousands and thousands of the mentally ill from all over Europe have come to this town, Gill, in Belgium, and they've lived there. They're not treated like patients. They're not called patients. They're not called the mentally ill. They move in people's homes, and they live in the home as family members. They have chores, and they sleep in beds like everybody else. And sometimes they don't behave well, and everybody expects it. They kind of know that's going on. And they walk around the street, and everybody knows that people behave all kinds of ways in this town. They've just accepted it. Although one of the running jokes in the town is some of the people who just live there get mistaken for the mentally ill guests. Which is how it is. I try to think about this. What kind of church do we want to be? I think about people that I know that are mentally ill. It's kind of all of us, but also think about, I have a friend whose wife is bipolar, and she really struggles. They really struggle. Or I think of my dad and his wife. Her Alzheimer's has just advanced so rapidly, and she's so confused and belligerent. She used to know me and not anybody else. Now she doesn't know who I am, and just sad. The one thing I know about these two people is they need exactly the same thing that you and I need. They need love. They need somebody to put an arm around them, call them by name, even if they don't know their own name. They need a church. My dad's wife, I think she misses going to church. they say she can't go to church, but why is that? Love. What kind of community are we going to be? We're all doing the best we can down here, trying to live a good life. I guess I'd just refer us again to what Moses said up there on Mount Nebo when the people were about to go in and possess the land. He said to them, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, you probably have to figure out what they are before you can obey them. By loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways, then, and I would add, and only then, shall you live. Let us live. Let's be God's people, God who loves us enough to give us commandments.